Hello friends, today is May 11th, 2020. If we do a countdown, we only have 10 more days left in the school year. That is crazy. I can't believe you guys are going to be fourth graders already. So woohoo to that. For our to-do list today, third grade, we still have a decent chunk of the one and only Ivan to read. So we will be doing our read aloud today. You'll have an activity on Seesaw and end your day on Raz Kids. Remember, I am looking for those people to drop off a weekly prize for people who are doing what they need to do. That includes all the steps on Seesaw. So if I see that you're not on iReady or Raz Kids, I cannot qualify you for the prize because you aren't getting all of your steps in. So please make sure you are getting those done. And I am so proud of you guys for everything that you've been doing. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, third grade, even though we only have 10 more days left of the school year, it does not mean that you cannot get 10 days smarter. So let's go ahead and get started with our random fact of the day. Did you know that a flamingo can eat only when its head is upside down? It is so crazy. Of all these different facts that we've been learning about animals, I am just thrilled and sometimes even shocked knowing about some of these random facts, and I couldn't even imagine what it would be like to eat upside down. But I am glad that we now have another random fact of the day under our belt, so let's go ahead and get started with reading. Alrighty friends, we are going to be reading quite a bit today, but I do want to refresh our memories where we left off. We left off on the part where Ivan was trying to tell Julia something, and he was trying to tell her with one of his paintings, he was trying to make the letter H, meaning he was trying to tell her the word home. So she didn't quite understand what he was meaning by that. So she had left for the night, and then Ivan is still working on his painting for Ruby. Okay? All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with angry. Thump. The sound, my sound, echoes through the mall. George and Julia spin around. Julia drops her backpack. George drops his keys. The pile of pictures go flying. Thump, thump, thump. I bounce off the walls. I screech and bellow. I beat and beat and beat my chest. Bob hides under knot tag, his paws over his ears. I'm angry at last. I have someone to protect. Puzzle pieces. After a long while, I grow quiet. I sit. It's hard work being angry. Julia looks at me with wide, disbelieving eyes. I'm painting. I'm a little out of shape. What the heck was that? George demands. Something's really wrong, Julia says. I've never seen Ivan act this way. He seems to be calming down, thank goodness, George says. Julia shakes her head. He's still upset, Dad. Look at his eyes. My pictures are scattered all over the floor, like huge autumn leaves. What a mess, George says, sighing. Wish I hadn't bothered sweeping tonight. Do you think Ivan's okay? Julie asks. Probably just a temper tantrum, George says. He reaches under a chair to retrieve a brown and red picture. Can't say I blame the guy. Stuck in the tiny cage all these years. Julia starts to answer, but then she freezes. She cocks her head. She stares at her feet where my pictures lie in disarray. Dad, she whispers, come see this. I'm sure he's another Rembrandt, George says. Let's pick these up and get going, Jules. I'm exhausted. Dad, she says again, seriously, look at this. George follows her gaze. I see blobs, many, many blobs, along the occasional swirl. Please, can we go home now? That's an H, Dad. Julia kneels down, straightening one picture then another. That's an H. And here, she grabs more pictures. put this one here. And I don't know, maybe that one. You have an E. George rubs his eyes, and I hold my breath. Julia's running now. She picks up one picture, sets down another. It's like a puzzle, Dad. This is something. It's a word, maybe words, and a picture of something, a giant picture. Jules, George says, this is crazy. But he's looking at the floor too, wandering from picture to picture and scratching his head. H, Julia says, E-O. Ho? Julia chews her lower lip. H-E-O. And that looks a lot like an I. H-E-O-I. George writes in the air with his finger. I-E-O-H. Not the letter, an actual I. And that's a foot. Or maybe a tree and a trunk. Dad, I think that's a trunk. Julia runs to my window. Ivan, she whispers, what did you make? I stare back. I cross my arms. This is taking much longer than I thought it would. Humans. Sometimes they make chimps look smart. Finally, Julia and George take the pictures to the ring where there's room to see them all. An hour passes as they try to assemble my puzzle. Ruby's awake now, and she and Bob and I watch. Ivan, Ruby asks, is that picture for me? Yes, I say proudly. Where am I supposed to be? That's a zoo, Ruby. See the walls and the grass and the people looking at you? Ruby squints. Who are all those other elephants? I haven't met them, I say. Yet. It's a very nice zoo, Ruby says with an approving nod. Bob nudges me with one cold nose. It is indeed. In the ring, Julia plumps her fist in the air. Yes, she cries. I told you, Dad. There it is. H-O-M-E. Home. George gazes at the letters. He spins around to look at me. Maybe it's just a coincidence, Jules. You know, a once in a trillion kind of thing, like the old saying about the chimp and the typewriter. Give him long enough and he'll write a novel. I make a grumbling noise, as if a chimp could write a letter, let alone a book. Well, then how do you explain the rest of it? Julia demands. The picture of Ruby in a zoo? How do you know it's a zoo? George asks. See the circle on the gate? That's a red giraffe in it. George squints and tilts his head. Are you sure that's a giraffe? I'm not thinking more along the lines of a deformed cat. It's a logo for the zoo, Dad. It's on all their signs. Explain that. George gives her a helpless smile. I can't begin to. I'm just saying, there has to be a logical explanation. Look how big it is. Julia puts the last piece of Ruby's right ear into place. It's huge. It is definitely large, George agrees. Julia watches me. She chews on her thumbnail. I see the question in her eyes. She turns back to the paintings and stares at them, looking, truly looking. A slow smile dawns on Julia's face. Dad, she says, I have an idea. A big idea. Julia races around the edge of my painting, her arms spread wide. Billboard big. I'm not following you. I think this is meant to be on a billboard. That's what Ivan wants. George crosses his arm over his chest. What Ivan wants, he repeats slowly. And you know this because you two have been chatting? Because I'm an artist and he's an artist. Uh-huh, says George. Julia clasps her hands together. Come on, Dad, I'm begging you. George shakes his head. No, I'm not doing that. No billboard. No way. I'll get the ladder, Julia says. You get the glue, and I know it's dark out, but the billboard's lit. Mac will fire me, Jules. Julia considers. But think of the publicity, Dad. Everybody would know about Ruby. You want me to put up a sign that shows Ruby in a zoo with the word home on it in giant letters. George gestures toward my pictures. A sign. Incidentally, that just happens to have been made by a gorilla. Exactly. And you want me to do it without Mac's permission? George asks. Exactly. No, George says. No way. Julia goes to the edge of the ring, careful not to step on any of my paintings. She picks up Mac's claw stick. She walks back and hands it to her father. George runs a finger along the blade. She's just a baby, Dad. Don't you want to help her? But how would it help, Jules? Even if lots of people see Ivan's sign, it doesn't mean anything's going to change. I'm not exactly sure yet. Julia shakes her head. Maybe people will see the sign and they'll know this isn't where Ruby belongs. Maybe they'll want to help too. George sighs. He looks at Ruby. She waves her trunk. It's a matter of principle, Dad. Princicipal. L-E, George corrects. Dad, Julia says softly, what if Ruby ends up like Stella? George looks at me, at Ruby, at Julia. He drops the claw stick. The ladder, he says quietly, is in the storage locker. The next morning, I watch Mac's car slam to a halt in the parking lot. He leaps out. He stares at the billboard. His jaw is open. He doesn't move for a long time. Mad human. A mad gorilla is loud, but a mad human can be loud too, especially when he is throwing chairs and turning over tables and breaking the cotton candy machine. Phone call. Mac is kicking a trash can across the food court when the phone rings. He answered it, red-faced and sweating. What the? He demands. He glares at me. I don't know what you're... he started to say, but then he stops to listen. Who? Julia, who? He asks. Oh, sure. George's kid? She's the one who called you? More talking. With the phone on his ear, Mac comes closer to my cage, eyeing me suspiciously. Yeah, he says. He paints, sure. We've been selling his art for quite a while now. There's another long pause. Yeah, absolutely. It was my idea. Mac nods. A smile starts at the corner of his mouth. Photos? No problem. You want to see them in action? Come on down, have a look. We're open 365 days a year. Can't miss us. We're right off of I-95. Mac picks up the overturned trash can. Yeah, I think he'll be adding more pictures. It's a, what do you call it? A work in progress? When the phone call is done, Mac shakes his head. Impossible, he says. An hour later, a man with a camera comes to take my picture. He is from the local paper, the one Julia called. How about you take one of me with the elephant? Mac suggests. He drapes his arm around Ruby's back, grinning at the camera as the camera clicks. Perfect, the man says. Perfect, Mac agrees. Almost done, third grade. A star again. A photo of my billboard is in the newspaper. Mac tapes the story onto my window. Each day, more curious people arrive. They park in the front of the billboard. They point and shake their heads. They take photos. Then they come into the mall and buy my paintings. While visitors watch, I dip my hands in fresh buckets of paint. I make pictures for the gift shop, and pictures add to the billboard. Trees with birds, a newborn elephant with glittering black eyes, a squirrel, a bluebird, a worm. I even paint Bob so he can be on the billboard too. I can tell he likes the picture, although he says I didn't quite capture his distinguished nose. Every afternoon, Mac and George add my new pictures to the billboard. People slow their cars while they work. Drivers honk and wave. My gift shop pictures now cost $65 with frame. The Ape Artist. I have new names. People call me the Ape Artist, the permanent Picasso. I have visitors from morning till night, and so does Ruby. But nothing's changed for her. Every day at 2, 4, and 7, Ruby plods through the sawdust with Snickers on her back. Every night she has bad dreams. Bob, I say after I soothe Ruby to sleep with my story, my idea isn't working. Bob opens one eye. Be patient. I'm tired of being patient, I say. 2 more pages, 3rd grade. Interview. This evening, a man and a woman come to interview Mac and also George and Julia. The man has a large and heavy camera perched on his shoulders. He films me as I make my pictures. He films Ruby in her cage with her foot roped to the bolt in the floor. Mind if I look around? He asks. Mac waves his hand. Be my guest. While Mac and the woman talk, the cameraman walks through the mall. He pans his camera right and left and up and down. When his eye falls on the claw stick, he stops. He trains his camera on the gleaming blade. Then he moves on. The early news. Mac turns on the TV. We are on the early news at 5 o'clock. Bob says, don't let it go to my head. There we all are. Mac, Ruby, me, George and Julia. The billboard, the mall, the ring, and the claw stick.
All right, 3rd grade, I know that was a ton of reading today, but hey, we got it done. We only have about, now tomorrow will be 9 days left of school, so I want to make sure that we finish the story, and I know we will. So I'm sorry that today was a little bit longer than usual, but I know you guys are going to do great. Make sure you get your seesaw activity done, and make sure you get onto Raz Kids today. I can see who's doing their work, okay? I hope you guys have an amazing Monday, and I will tune in with you tomorrow to do some math with you guys. Alrighty, guys. Talk to you later. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.